Good morning, and welcome everyone to this joint side event hosted by both the West African Alliance on Carbon Markets and Climate Finance and IETA, BPMI, the Business Partnership for Market Implementation. I welcome you all to the event on scaling up public and private capacity to deliver the goals of the Paris Agreement and lessons from the launch of the West African Carbon Market Hub. My name is Sandra Greiner. I'm lead consultant at Climate Focus, and with Climate Focus we are a technical partner of the West African Alliance. So it's my pleasure to moderate this event. At the end of September, the West African Alliance and IETA BMI jointly hosted the first edition of the West African Carbon Market Hub in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire. And it was a conference attended by both public sector and private sector participants who are active in the West African region in carbon markets. So this hub basically brought them together for a 3-day conference to exchange on both technical questions, but also on the guidelines or the North Stars for carbon market development in the region. We also had a lot of interactions and some matchmaking between actors in West Africa. So in this session, what we would like to do is, first of all, basically share what happened and reflect on the lessons learned from this event, which was attended by over 200 participants. And then, of course, also looking into the future, drawing some lessons from this event and see what can be done going forward, leveraging this outcome. We have just the right panel to discuss this with us today. We have the main organizers of the event. Actually, you see one free seat. Our coordinator of the West African Alliance, Usman Farsar, is on his way and about to arrive. And otherwise, we have, as the main organizers, Andrea Bonzani on our left, who is policy director at IETA and helped to make it all possible and come together, of course, with a number of other staff members from IETA. So this was massive effort and really terrific. Then we have on my left, we have Rachel Boti-Douayua. She is the carbon market focal point of Cote d'Ivoire and with the Ministry of Environment, and was our host of this conference. So many thanks for that as well. Then in the middle we have Antwi Boasiako, who is with the EPA of Ghana. And of course in the West African region and beyond, all of us know that Ghana really is a front runner when it comes to carbon markets. So it's a real pleasure to have you with us. Then we have with us Alexis Leroy from Alcott. He's the CEO of Alcott, and he also is one of the co-chairs of IETA's BPMI initiative. Great to have you with us. And last but not least, Martin Janssen, who is the head of partnership of Rabobank's ACORN initiative. And ACON is an initiative that is helping smallholder farmers to transition to agroforestry. And welcome also Usman Falsar, our coordinator of the West African Alliance. So with no further ado, I can now also kick off our panel discussion, starting with Usman. And asking the question, what inspired you to host this event, this West African Carbon Market Hub, and what did you expect as outcome? There's a microphone just there.
Good afternoon, everybody. Happy to have you all in this room, and thank you, Sandra, for this question. First of all, my apologies for the delay, because Senegal wanted me on the panel on JETP, just energy transition. So, and I had to do some advocacy for carbon market integration in the JETP implementation in Senegal, because we have a very ambitious target of reaching 40% of the electricity mix by 2030. So it was really important for me to make this in my own country because of awareness raising issue. So I'm very pleased to be here to share our lessons learned from the event we called the launching of the West African Carbon Market Hub we organized in Abidjan in September. The reason why we had this initiative was due to the fact that after the creation of the Alliance, we managed to do our best to be really involved in the negotiation process of Article 6 in order to be ready when it becomes operational to take advantage and foster the development of carbon market in our sub-region. First, we did a lot of effort to prepare our member countries. We initiated a blueprint for Article 6 readiness. We hear from our member countries what was their needs, what were their priority needs, and we also try to do some survey to see what was the main gaps in our sub-region and what was required to develop carbon market in our sub-region. We've conducted several surveys, several studies in that regard, and that gave a bit of picture of the situation in the sub-region. When we were doing this, we realized that one of the main barriers for carbon market uptake in West Africa, in addition to the readiness issue, was also the lack of knowledge, the lack of awareness, and the origination barrier that we found in our sub-region. From private sector perspective, from local community perspective, from NGO perspective, we did realize that there is a gap in terms of awareness, there is a gap in terms of capacity, and there is a gap in terms of project development. How to fix this? After a small consultation with all the members, we decided to create an enabling environment, a framework where we can have all key stakeholders in one place and to facilitate interaction between stakeholders, and at the end of the day, maybe to have as main outcome some partnership development, some business development, and that will be a good trigger for the development of carbon market in our sub-region. That's why we have this idea of creating the West African Carbon Market Hub that would be an opportunity for the local private sectors, the governments, all the key stakeholders involved in carbon markets to get in one place to discuss, to exchange, and to build partnership so that at the end of the day, we can have some concrete actions implemented on the ground. Because after the rounds of capacity building we have organized, most of our member countries were reproaching us that we lacked some concrete actions on the ground. So it's good to have workshops, it's good to have training sessions, but we need to have concrete projects implemented on the ground. How do we do that? The first step would be to have all the stakeholders in one place and try to facilitate this interaction and the development of partnership that can lead to implementation of concrete projects. We targeted the project developer, but we want also to have the political buy-in from our decision makers. That's why during this event we have specific session dedicated to ministers, because you cannot develop carbon market in Africa without having a real political engagement. You know what's happening in the continent, and in terms of regulatory framework and in terms of challenges, you have heard of many issues regarding policy, regarding political interference. So it's good to anticipate all this by having the policymakers on board, but to have them on board, they need to be capacitated. We need to raise awareness among them. And that's why in this event, we managed to have a ministers' roundtable that was very, very interesting, because at the end of this event, we managed to have their full endorsement of what we are doing, their full support and engagement, and they did realize the importance that carbon market can have in the implementation of our respective NDCs in the sub-region. So it was really a positive outcome, and one of the main satisfaction we got from Abidjan was the level of attendance, more than 200 people, and the content of the discussions was really amazing. It's really rare to see in an event where people stay in the room after the sessions, continue to discuss until 8 p.m., 9 p.m. That was the first time I saw this kind of things in Abidjan. So it was our first event, and we wanted to be regular every year, and we will work to have it on a regular basis in our region, and in good partnership with BPMI, that I also take the opportunity to thank again for their collaboration and their support in this experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Usman. That was a really nice summary also, what happened. Now let's hear maybe from the business community about what inspired AITA BPMI to engage in this event, and what was your expected outcome, and hopefully it has been met.
Thank you, Sandra, and good afternoon, everyone. So just to start, BPMI stands for Business Partnership for Market Implementation. It's a long name, but we chose it because we named ourselves after the World Bank's PMI. It's the bank's capacity building programs on carbon markets, and we launched at the World Bank's I4C conference in May 2022. And our objective is to complement the World Bank programs with some government-to-government engagement and capacity building. The collaboration on these topics between AITA and the World Bank goes back many years, at least a decade. When the World Bank had the PMR program, we run our own BPMR, and we focused primarily on China and South Korea, two countries that at the time were setting up their emission trading systems that are now both operational. And so as the World Bank entered into a new phase after the pandemic, we wanted to continue to provide that support and upgrade ourselves, up our game for the new context and the new carbon market architecture that emerged at COP26 in Glasgow. So the World Bank provides non-financial support to BPMI. The financial support is provided by a coalition of 10 AITA member companies, two of which are here represented on this panel, and we hope to have a few more next year. And with these 10 members, we decided on a work program for 2023, and we identified 3 target countries. So 2 are 2 very large countries, Indonesia and Brazil. And then we started to look at West Africa, and whilst there was a lot of interest in the region, we realized that there was no country that was standing out or that would have the size in terms of population and market to justify a single country focus. So we decided to engage regionally in the West Africa region. And it was a good choice because it's a region that's already quite tightly integrated with political institutions, but also with more informal networks such as the West African Alliance. And the whole story started at COP27 last year in Sharm el-Sheikh. We met, we decided we wanted to work together, and then the engagement throughout the year culminated in Abidjan. Usman described quite well what happened in that meeting. I think we have a shared evaluation of why it was a success. I would just mention from a business perspective and from the perspective of international companies that are doing business in West Africa or are looking to do business, we found that it was quite easy to mobilize and engage both the governments and the private sector in the region. There was a real eagerness to get involved in carbon market and to really reap the benefits of all carbon market instruments. And also from our interaction with the government, we found that they are, yes, willing to engage, but also they know what they're doing and they know what they need. Yes, we stress a lot the need for capacity building, but I think we need to build capacity from a knowledge base that's already quite good. I think from the outside, sometimes we talk about potential host countries under Article 6, developing and least developed countries, sometimes in a patronizing way. We hear that they cannot authorize credits because they don't know what they're doing, it's too risky for them. But what I found in Abidjan is that there's an understanding of what Article 6 means, the opportunities, the risk. They are very well organized in the negotiation to try and promote their interests. So yes, it was a success, and we want to keep the momentum on and continue engagement in 2024 and make the West African Carbon Market Hub a regular event. Usman, I cannot commit now whether it will be annual or biannual. It also depends on resources, financial and non-financial, but it will certainly be a recurrent event, not a one-off. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea, and that's fantastic to hear. So now let me turn to our host in Abidjan, Rachel Botti. And well, you've been also really engaged in the preparation of this workshop. It took a lot of effort, it took a lot of resources also on the part of the host country. So to you also, of course, the question, what was your expectation and was it worth it? And did you see that hosting such an event played a role also on the domestic level in terms of getting prepared for Article 6?
Thank you, Sandra. And before answering your question, I also would like to thank the West Africa Alliance and AITA for the choice on Côte d'Ivoire to organize this first of its kind event in West Africa. Now coming to your question, our expectation was first the mobilization of local stakeholders, the mobilization at the high level of authorities, and when we look back at the event, we can say that it's a success because, as Usman said, we had a great mobilization of all the stakeholders, the public, the private sector, the high-level authorities. So we can say that our expectations were met. Now, what are the impact of this event at the local level? We were working on Article 6 because we are part of the West Africa Alliance for like 5 years, I think. And we were engaged in the process. And it was difficult because, as the focal point, sometimes it's not easy to just tell the authorities that it's something that engage different stakeholders, that engage different parties. They don't see the concrete actions on the ground when we just talk. So with this event, they saw the mobilization of all the different partners, financial partners, the private sectors, the civil societies. So it was a proof that carbon market is not something, is something concrete. So we have this impact on the local authorities' awareness. And also, it enabled us to accelerate the process, the ongoing process in our country, because we were working on the regulatory and institutional framework on carbon markets. And we had the validation, the technical validation of this framework on November 2023. So it's also an achievement. So these are the two, I think, achievements made after this this event. So the mobilization of the local stakeholders and the validation of the framework. And now we are looking at other steps after the scope is to implement Article 6. And I think it's the most important things, the implementation. And the contact between the different stakeholders, I think, will enable the partnership, will enable the creation of partnership. And we think that after this COP, we will be able to fully operationalize the Article 6 on carbon markets. I would like to stop here. Thank you.
Wow. You're stopping on a high note, though. Okay, that's great impact. Thank you for sharing that. Let me now turn to Dr. Antwi from Ghana. And I think probably for you I have the most difficult question. Because so we were quite pleased to see that Ghana was very strongly represented at the event with both private sector and public sector participants. So I would like you to share some insights about the outcome for the Ghanaian delegation. I think you're used to this difficult coordination task because you're also the UNFCCC focal point for Ghana. But if you could share a bit broadly about the experience from Ghanaian participants. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Good afternoon, everybody. So maybe I'll start by thanking AITA and then the Alliance for involving Ghana in this process and also giving us the opportunity to participate in this very important experience sharing workshop, our side event. And then also, I also want to thank the leadership of the Alliance under the able leadership of Osman for the consistency, because ever since this issue came onto the table, I think he's been very consistent and he's actually showing leadership within the sub-region. Maybe because of the experiences we had with the CDM, I think we don't want to make mistakes this time. And so if you have leaders that are having vision, I think it makes their followers like us also follow sustainably. So I just want to commend the Alliance, especially Osman, for that great job that he's been doing for the sub-region. And now coming to the question, we have a history as Ghana. I think even though we participated with the CDM process, we came in late. And so we didn't actually have any substantial benefits from the CDM. And we didn't want to repeat that mistake. And so we are, if you can actually see the lines, we are one of the early movers simply because once it's a multilateral process that a lot of parties believe in it, not only parties but also other stakeholders, especially there's a business case to do that. And it means that as a country we need to reposition ourselves to make sure we benefit. And it's going to be a platform where we can leverage a lot of resources to drive action within the NDC context and even outside the NDC context. And so I think that is our motivation. And so from day one, we are marching. And so we saw the Abidjan platform as a very important and unique one. Why? Because it was first of its kind. If you look at the coast of West Africa from A to Z, and then the people within the sub-region, we have a lot of things in common. And so if we are going together in one vision to make sure that we pull our resources together to make sure West Africa benefits, then we have to take advantage as a country. And so we represented because we saw a very good vision in this. Secondly, we also feel that it is a platform that is bringing, like the others have said already, bringing a lot of stakeholders together, which in actual fact is very difficult to do as an individual or as an individual country because of resources and also because of people's time and so on and so forth. So if that platform had been provided, we think that it is an opportunity for our private sector to also showcase what they are doing, our government to also showcase the structures that they are putting in place, and then the other stakeholders who are contributing to this process to also demonstrate what they can do in this process. So we saw that stakeholder matching as a very important component of the hub. Again, we also see capacity building initiative in that process because long term, if that's supposed to be continuous, as even had been indicated by our colleague from ITA, it means that we can actually trade among ourselves in terms of experiences, in terms of our strengths, so that we can also work on our weaknesses together. And so we also felt that we need to go and see what others are doing. We need to listen to what can we take home as Ghana? What are we not doing? Because we cannot say we are doing everything right. Maybe others also have something important that we don't have at the moment. Our key competitor is Senegal. And I think that we have to make sure that we take everything as it is and then work on it. So I think we went in to also learn from the others because others have so much to give. And finally, there are a lot of, the outcomes are many. I can't highlight them in terms of time. So final thing, we also see business opportunity in this. So we need to also take advantage. Leveraging finance to work within the energy sector, the agri sector, the transport sector, the waste sector, which are all key to our socioeconomic development. And so we think that that was a very good platform, and we are hoping that it doesn't become a 9-day wonder, but it continues the way it has started. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think I just have to correct one thing. Ghana is not a follower, but also a leader.
I was just teasing us.
But thank you so much for sharing. Let me now turn to Alexis Leroy. And actually with your two hats, right, working for as a CEO of Alcott and also being the co-chair of this business partnership, what would you say has been the added values for the international companies attending this forum? I mean, me personally, I witnessed a lot of small little groups and corridors, and I did not know what each of them were talking about. But there seemed to be some dynamic. So from your perspective, what did you witness?
Thank you for that question. So as you know, with the two hats, so Alcott is a project developer, early one. We've been in the market since 2009, so we've seen quite a lot of evolution. And with the BPMI, we also see a lot of evolution, you know, with the COP, which we attend, and the interaction we have with the public sector from a private sector point of view. What was quite amazing in the Abidjan gathering was really the mixed. So we saw that the public sector was extremely committed. We had two ministers. We had, I think, 7 DNA. We had representatives also from subnational authorities, like, you know, even the mayor of Kafountine, who's here with us today. We also had a very large number of YETA members coming from all over the world, Asia, US, Canada, Europe. And we also had a lot of local stakeholders. So there was not only Ivory entrepreneur, but there was also people from Senegal, people from Ghana. So it was quite an extraordinary mix, because this in our industry doesn't usually happen. We have those encounters at COP, but it's essentially politically driven. And Abidjan was essentially business driven. So from the public sector point of view, I like to think that, and Madame Bouty reminded us, it was very important for the head, you know, ministers and others to really see that it's happening. And even if the negotiation, dare I say, are stalling a little bit, we're 8 years after Paris, we can see that the business sector is there and responding. And for the business sector, it was quite incredible to have access to all of this political power and voice, and all of those conversations that Ousmane was mentioning in the corridor, and you referred to as well, are part of that. So we've learned from one another, and it creates something that our market is deeply lacking of: confidence and trust. So I think this needs to happen again. Andrea has the baton to decide when, but I can assure you that as a co-chair, we'll push as hard as possible to make sure that it happens frequently, and that it's not just a conversation, but it really allows us to deploy business while negotiation keeps on going.
Thank you so much, and also thank you so much for your support. So we have also Martine with us from the private sector, from Rabobank's Acorn initiative, who was a very prominent participant at the event, and even managed to bring the Dutch ambassador to Abidjan to the event, where an event was signed between Rabobank and the West African Alliance to collaborate. So I'm very pleased to have you here with us today as well, to tell us a bit about Acorn initiatives, as well as what your activities are in the sub-region and your experiences. And I believe that what you are promoting in terms of smallholder activities in agriculture also is a very fitting activity for the West African context. So glad to have you with us. Yes.
Thank you, Sandra. And yeah, as a small intro, perhaps, as you requested on Acorn. Acorn is an initiative started by Rabobank with the intention to stimulate more farmers to transition to agroforestry, because we believe that that can benefit a lot of farmers in becoming more climate resilient, and also that there's a lot of farmers that can benefit from diversification of their income, of their produce. And we see that in West Africa, there's a lot of potential for farmers to make that transition and to benefit from that. So for us, a very interesting market to look at. When we started Acorn, what we wanted to do is to ensure that the majority of the benefits of the carbon credits, because we think carbon credits might help in stimulating more farmers to make that switch, but only if then the majority of that funds flow back to the farmers. So we've tried to come up with a proposal that, or a project or a proposition to make sure that we significantly reduce the cost of being onboarded to a carbon program and significantly increase the price of the carbon credits to ensure that substantial value flows to the farmers. We do that by, on the one hand side, trying to simplify the certification process, and by reducing the cost of measurement and monitoring by using remote sensing data. And on the other hand, trying to sell those credits as a very transparent and traceable credits, which improves the quality and with that the price. And then we ensure that 80% of the value of the credits flows back to the farmers that in the end do all the work. We've started working already in Ghana together with the Ministry of Food and Agriculture to stimulate more farmers to switch to agroforestry, combining cashew and moringa and mango in the climate transition zones. And also in Côte d'Ivoire, we've been active and we've been able to transfer 2 million euros to the hands of the smallholder farmers, and we're pretty proud about that. But what is critical is to ensure that we're working together with the local environments, and that first and foremost is obviously the governments. We want to ensure that what we do complies with what the governments are trying to do, and that it enhances also their plans in terms of NDCs and just general commitments towards farmers. So having an alliance that kind of coordinates those efforts is very important for us, because it makes it easier to connect with all of the relevant stakeholders, but also gives guidance as to what should be discussed and how we can do that. So we're thrilled to be part of that, and we're very happy and proud to also sign an MOU during the West African Alliance meeting to really further underline that we're hoping to strengthen our partnership and do more in the end for the benefit of the farmers in the region.
Great. Thank you so much. And I think that leads us now also to the question, what can be done, right? So now we heard about this format, but now we need to take it one step further, right? So what can be done to promote functioning markets that bring benefits to the regions and that are also attractive for investors to come in? And let me, in this context, ask Usman, because the Carbon Hub also culminated in a call, in the Abidjan call for a West African carbon market hub. Could you please share with us some of the main elements of what this call was about and why it was, why you decided to adopt it?
Thank you, Sandra. That was the main outcome of our event, because we had an objective when we invited all the stakeholders to this meeting, this gathering in Abidjan. But we decided to cover several topics: project origination, private sector engagement, regulatory framework, all the issues relative to the development of carbon markets, capacity building, assurance, insurance, many topics that are related to carbon market. We decided to have several sessions during this event to cover and to invite experts to discuss about it. What we have seen during this event, we got some key messages coming from these different sessions that are really important to take into consideration if we want to develop carbon market in West Africa. That was the main reason why we had this call. This call is a kind of, I can say, wake-up call for all the actors, the private sector, the decision makers, the local communities, the project developers, what needs to be done in order to have an uptake of carbon market in West Africa. People put the stress on integrity, they put the stress on using carbon compliance market and voluntary carbon market, fair benefit sharing, capacity building, how we can create appropriate regulatory framework in our countries, how to facilitate experience sharing between member countries, how to facilitate project origination, how to ensure political buy-in, and so on. So many aspects have been raised and recommendations have been made toward the stakeholders so that at the end of the day, if we implement those recommendations, we will really achieve our goal of having a very dynamic carbon market in our sub-region. After this event, we managed to open new areas. And one of the most important areas is to create a kind of platform for interaction between Alliance member countries and between stakeholders. That's what we are now currently working on in our website, that we are trying to make a capacity building platform, because after the elaboration of our Article 6 blueprint, now we are trying to make it dynamic, to make it lively through our web-based platform. And we are also working with partners to see how we can have an online platform that can help developers, that can help project proponents to engage with other investors in terms of project development that will be more simplified and the approach will be streamlined. So, and many others activities that we are now planning to implement at the West African Alliance level. So I think this call have been shared with everyone who participated in the event, and it has been published, and it has been also really forwarded to our decision makers, so that action can be taken on a very urgent manner when it comes to develop carbon market in our sub-region. And we expect that we will have the expected impact, and we will do our best in terms of follow-up, in terms of putting some KPIs and trying to monitor them. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Usman. And as you mentioned, the Abidjan call has been published, so you could access it through various websites. If you just type in West African Carbon Market Hub, you find it on the West African Alliance website, on the BPMI website, also on the German Carbon Mechanisms website, because Germany has been a key funder of this event, which we should also mention through the being a key donor of the alliance. And also thanks for raising that the West African Alliance website is being overhauled. So please watch this space and check it again maybe in February when this progress has been realized. Okay, let me now turn again to Dr. Antwi. In light actually of the many experiences that Ghana has already accumulated with carbon markets, what is your take on this, the recommendations that are in this Abidjan call? What do you think is particularly important, or maybe have stakeholders missed to mention some aspects in the call?
Thank you again, Sandra. So, first of all, I just want to acknowledge that it is first of its kind in the sub-region. So, a very important platform. It brought a lot of stakeholders, as we have said earlier on, together. And so the outcomes are very critical. Osman just articulated some of the key issues that is being highlighted in the outcome. So it is very important. It is preparing the sub-region to be ready for this very important business within the context of carbon. However, we need to tread cautiously as we are people that has a very diverse population, even within countries. In terms of maybe the level of education of the people, we have systems where there are some complications. Traditional authorities having key roles. She just mentioned a project that they are spearheading in Ghana for smallholder farmers. When it comes to land tenure system in Ghana, for example, it's a bit complicated. And so in terms of benefit sharing, the proceeds that comes out of this process, because probably you don't have maybe a very well-defined land tenure system, there can be complications. So this is where we are saying that we need to tread cautiously so that we create the needed awareness so that all stakeholders can be well involved so that we all go together. So there's some caution, even though there's some positive business cases in this direction. We also see that having a platform where stakeholders are coming together, as Osman just also indicated, is a very good thing that we need to support to make sure that it comes to life, and then it can be able to also be a platform to even create education apart from building capacity. And so that's one thing that we also want to highlight. I think there is also the issue of frameworks and standards that we need to also work on with rigor, because there are complications, there are a lot of probably some kind of nostalgia around this issue of carbon market. But I've had personally, even people from academia, I also lecture in the university, and so you have questions that sometimes you ask yourself, maybe we have not done our homework well in creating awareness to stakeholders, because people think that is some kind of demon that is coming to take away people's rights and properties and so on and so forth. And so we need to do a lot of awareness creation in this. And if you have standards and frameworks and regulations that will help people to go by the structures, I think at the end of the day it's going to be a win-win situation instead of people having some kind of... So there are a number of things that we can talk of, but then it has to be anchored within the priorities of the countries. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. That's very important. And on this note, let me turn again to Martine. And so well, you already explained to us that you expect also support from the West African Alliance. But given also some of the complexities on the ground, which Dr. Antwi mentioned, what is it that can be done? So what can governments do? What can the Alliance do to facilitate your activities in West Africa?
Yeah, so a couple of things are very important for us. First and foremost, we really hope that when policies are being developed, that there is open and transparent dialogues where all of the stakeholders are being involved, including the private sector, to make sure that the policies meet kind of the requirements also from a private perspective. As you can imagine, we, with the ACORN program, try to invest quite a lot in terms of financial resources, in terms of capacity building. And that comes with a risk. So then it is very important to understand our perspective, but also the perspective of on the other side, and to understand what the ideas are and to understand what the potential risks are. And related to that is also clear and transparent frameworks, so that there's clarity on the direction of the government and how they look at the carbon market in the whole context of their ambition. So those are things for us very important, where I think also the West African Alliance can play a role. And then for us, as ACORN, another important thing is to make sure that the smallholder or the farmer's voice is really being heard in this whole context. So when we try to develop a project, we always try to make sure that we think of, for example, on the agroforestry side, do we stimulate agroforestry that benefits the farmers? But also on the financial benefit side, does the financial benefit end up with the farmers? And very important, are the farmers aware of this program, and do they intentionally consent to being part of that? So working with other organizations and stakeholders that have that in mind is very important for us before we decide we move into a country and invest there. So any support there from the West African Alliance and the governments would be very much welcomed.
Very good. Thank you for this very clear answer. And let me ask a very similar question or related question then to Alexis. As you're also developing projects in West Africa and you're hearing from the broader business community, what do you see are important enablers that governments or the alliance can promote that would make your life easier?
Well, I think the space that was created allows, to focus on, it highlights the opportunity, it highlights also the drive and the scale. In terms of opportunity, I think we will need 280 billion tons of CO2 equivalent by 2030 to meet with our NDCs. We have 6 years left. Clearly, even if there's a lot of unknown in terms of mechanism, we know that we're going to need carbon credit to bridge the gap. And to have a space where, again, the public sector and the private sector, with the academia, with the civil society, can work together on that is a unique opportunity. Then, in terms of drivers, I think, and Amoa mentioned before, the CDM era in Africa. Africa did miss out on the CDM, even on the voluntary market. Africa accounts for 80% of any exported commodities, yet Africa represents less than 2% of the voluntary carbon market. So I think that it shows that we have really partners, because they come as partners who have the drive to catch up on that, but not just from a commodity point of view, from an impact finance point of view. Numbers of our conversation, and one of the ateliers that I was particularly excited about was fairness. How do we bring fairness into the carbon market? How do we go from a price that is built on feeling or sensation to a price that is built on structure, the cost of a mitigation, the social cost attached to a project, and considering also the lifespan of the project. And third, for the private sector, scaling is important. Andrea mentioned before that part of the BPMI decision to support the alliance was because the alliance is a group of, I think, 16 countries, and that makes it attractive for the private sector. So, considering those 3 items, I think that one reflection that we could have is that maybe the ultimate enabler could be a program, a fairness investment program around carbon that could be crafted around the call of Abidjan and the gathering of the different actors. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for these thoughts and inputs. Turning now back to Andrea. So we already heard that he's holding the baton for future engagements. So, so obviously we want to ask the question to you. How do you see this format going forward? I mean, the calls that you've heard for added collaboration, also acknowledging that maybe we cannot monopolize you in West Africa, that AITA also, of course, has a global target audience. But so what are your perspectives from this experience of the West African Carbon Market Hub? How could the future look like?
Okay, so I'll start by saying that because the format was such a success in West Africa, we want to replicate it to other sub-regions on the Africa continent. So it's on our agenda for next year. We will have an East Africa Carbon Market Hub. We don't have a date, we don't have a location, it's all still in the work, but it has been decided that we will replicate this and trying to achieve the same successes elsewhere on the continent. On East Africa, I believe in-person engagement is invaluable, so we don't know when, but there will be another similar event in West Africa, but I think in-person engagement is also not scalable up to a point, so we need to find other ways to engage effectively. The call that we endorsed in Abidjan identifies a series of action that I hope will be moved forward, and I really support what Dr. Antwi said about the need to raise awareness more broadly. What I noticed in Abidjan it was that there was a big gap between the people who attended our event and everyone else in the countries. What we like to do is to try to break that, to bridge that gap to some extent. We like to partner with universities, with youth organizations, and really trying to train people on carbon markets. The BPMI sponsor companies would be happy to take interns from the regions, for example. We have a lot of good recording from our sessions and publications that could be part of a curriculum that interested people from the regions can download and take online. So yes, we will get together again, but I think even if we do it annually, I don't want the West African Carbon Market Hub to be an annual event. It has to be, as the word says, a hub for knowledge, a hub where people with interest in carbon markets can interact, can draw resources. So BPMI will certainly continue that work, and we can have a side event next year and update on all the good things we will do.
Oh, fantastic. That's we are taking very good note of all the announcements. And perhaps, now that we hear about replication of the event, let me turn again to Rachel to share with us, as the host country of this first hub, what have been the lessons learned for you in terms of organizing such an event, and what would you advise countries that might consider hosting such an event if they do so? And we have some East African colleagues in the room, so I think that's a valuable input.
Okay, thank you again, Sandra. What lesson we learned? I think we already talked about it. And I can repeat it again if you want. The first lesson, I think, is the experience sharing. We had the experience sharing of good practice. We had between the stakeholders. not only between the private sectors, but between the private and the government, between the private and the financial partners, and it was really important. The second lesson learned is it was about the matchmaking. The matchmaking between the different stakeholders, I think it's important. And it helps also the different stakeholders to identify the real needs. Because through the discussion, instead of moving ahead without knowing where to go, after the discussion, you are able to know where to go. So it helps identify the real need and save time. And also, as an achievement, we have the involvement of our decision makers. I think it's important to have the implication of those decision makers, because at the end of the day, we need to have policies, we need to draft strategies, we need to have a framework. So if the decision makers are not involved, it's difficult. So it's important. And we also had, I think, a real capacity building of the different stakeholders. And sometimes they even didn't know what is carbon markets. They just heard about that. They have some ideas of projects, but they don't know where to go. So it was important to have this kind of exchange. And for the advice for this kind of events, I think it's important to be well prepared in advance, to mobilize all the stakeholders. It's important because I think every country has its NDC, its own goal. So it's important to have all the partners, all the stakeholders again, so that we are on the same page to advance in the right direction, to move in the right directions. So the organization takes time, as you said in your introduction, but I think it's really important. With all I said about the knowledge sharing, all the benefits we can have, we just need to jump in the process and go ahead with the organizations. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And I think we've also been giving you a hard time because that also. But in terms of participants, right, I think the numbers kept creeping up. We started with lower amounts, and then it was very difficult to plan for the venue, right? So you need to be quite...
It was not only about the number. It was about the quality of the participants. And we had a high quality of participants. So it was really important because I think the objective is not to have a big event. To have a big event is to have an event where we can draw experience, where we can have an outcome, a real outcome from that. Thank you.
Yes, and I think also what went very well is that the program was not too packed, that there was space, and that the venue also allowed to have a lot of engagements on this side. Thanks. So I think we have time for one or two questions from the audience or comments in case anybody wishes to come on. Yes, please. We have a microphone. There's one.
Hi, fantastic to hear about this amazing, very good experience setting this carbon market. But I would like to hear the view from the panelists about the ongoing approval of what was proposed for the implementation of Article 6.4 and how they see for their countries how that can affect this process that you started or not. And we hear from the private sector that, I mean, they want to this markets ongoing despite of the delay on the negotiation. From the country point of view, how these proposals can affect or speed up this process.
Thanks. And so what do you refer to exactly in the negotiations of Article 6.4?
Yeah, is the implementation of in general, having the new mechanism and the UNFCCC approving the projects and having the repository of the projects, perhaps also in terms of methodologies, having more stringent methodologies to improve the credibility.
Thank you. Anybody on the panel wishing to answer on how that links to implementation of Article 6 on the ground, what is being negotiated under Article 6?
Especially 6.4.
Especially 6.4, yes.
Maybe I can jump in to say that under Article 6.4, I think we have some kind of stringency because it's a centralized mechanism. So we already had methodologies, even if we don't have Article 6 methodologies yet, but we can use the CDM methodologies. And those methodologies were consolidated, were approved, so we can use them. And under the UNFCCC track, I think we have this kind of stringency, and the environmental integrity is already saved, so we have no problem with 6.4. We are discussing, the discussion are ongoing on authorization and so on, but we have the position of the African group on that, but until the end of the negotiation, we cannot prejudge what will be the final decision. But we know that in previous decision, the authorization will be issued at the issuance, yes, will be given at the issuance of the units. So it's all we know under the 6.4. So when we want to issue the units, at this time, we deliver the authorization, and I think this is the position of the African group. But there's no problem of credibility under 6.4 because everything is centralized.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And let me also acknowledge the presence of our AGN, or African Group Lead Negotiator on carbon markets, Mr. El-Hadji Mbaidjian, with us, who's very closely also affiliated with the West African Alliance as a technical partner. Technical partner. So it's guiding us well on making sure that West African interests are also well presented in the negotiations. Unless there are any further questions, I want to anyway give you the floor. But just wanted to check if there's any other questions. Otherwise, I think we can close, and you can both add to the question, as well as I would like to invite our coordinator for some closing remarks of this event.
I just wanted to make a comment on the question raised by the lady, and I think it's really important, considering the strong interest we have in Africa on CDM, because we have a pipeline of existing CDM project, and CDM transitioning is really a priority for us. But to answer to your question, that's why we created this alliance in order to be more impactful in the negotiations. That's where decisions are taken. So if we get more organized and we involve ourselves in the negotiation, as explained by Rachel, under the leadership of one of our technical partners, who is the lead of the AGN, I think we could have a clear opportunity to make our concern taken into consideration when it comes to negotiate. We do recognize that the operationalization of Article 6 is taking a bit of time, but through negotiation, because you talk about negotiation, we are there. And we are trying to make our voice heard and our interests also put on the table. So that is what was missing in the CDM era. We were not as strong as we are now in the negotiation process. So that is the difference. So at the end of the day, we think that we would be sure that everything that is decided will be decided with us and not without us. That is the most important point I wanted to make in that regard. So coming back.
Apologies again, but we have one more question on the floor. Oh, two.
So my apologies. So I was a project developer in the first commitment period under Kyoto. That was 2008. But I struggle to accept that it's about negotiation. I think it's more about our strategic and commercial sense. Working with a lot of governments in Africa, half of the time I don't think that we have really identified that we can use the carbon markets to develop. We were thinking more of we are owed an ecological debt, which is true on one hand. However, if you look at China and India, they took a completely different approach, which is a very commercial approach. And as a result of that, they leveraged carbon markets for their benefit. And I still don't see that we are doing that in the kind of work that we are doing under Article 6. And I'd like to hear your comments about that. And I've seen you a lot, and I know that, I agree with Dr. Njube Siako about your consistency. So well done for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Chris, you have one more comment or question?
I'm also very sorry for coming late with my comments, but I would like to ask our two distinct from the private sector panelists. Have you worked or are you thinking about working with local private sector institutions in our countries or even NGOs to be able to scale up carbon markets?
Thank you. So I'll let Andrea or Alexis answer, and then we come back to Usman.
I'll gladly take that. I think it's fundamental. I think that, the same opportunity I mentioned before also rise a tremendous difficulty is capacity. We've been talking about capacity during this panel. It's a recurrent subject. And I think that the civil society, especially NGOs, have a deep understanding of the community's need and what solution can be brought to the table. So any project developer or any climate impact finance deployment has to be done with the civil society. Of course, it needs to be done in harmony with the local authorities and the national authorities, because that's also one of the autocritic that we need to take from the VCM, is that many projects were done in margin of any conversation or engagement with the government, and that needs to be fixed, whether it's Article 6 or VCM 2 or 3.0. I also think that the academic should be involved from the beginning. Projects are evolving. It's true that we have methodology, but they're going to evolve. Technology today with the blockchain and the satellite imagery and other tools will have a deep impact on our industry, so we need to have the academia involved from day one and make sure that the project will also become almost an academic satellite where we can nurture the future talent to work on that. So the short answer is yes, but our point of view is that any project today needs to be a public-private sector alliance, which is cemented by the local NGOs, civil society, and we cannot not include the academia from any of those projects.
Thank you. I think people are waiting outside. To wrap up, I would like to say that it was a really interesting event we have in Abidjan, and many takeaways in terms of lessons learned and how we should engage in order to develop a carbon market in our sub-region. And I think, as Andrea said, even if we will shift from one part of Africa to another part, we will try to think an innovative way to maintain this dynamic in our sub-region, because we don't want to give any room for this mobilization. We want to have a very dynamic mobilization in our sub-region, and we'll find innovative way to continue to have this gathering in a yearly basis. So to comment just on our sister's reaction regarding the comparison she made with China and others, we face several challenges that we are now trying to fix. For example, the capacity issue. We are starting anticipating on the Article 6 operationalization process. We made a lot of capacity building activities, and we had elaborated the blueprint. In terms of complexity of the rules, we are involved in the negotiation. We are trying to make the rules work for us. That is something that is happening on the ground, and Mr. Mbey is here to confirm it. Access to finance compared to India and China was a barrier for us. We are working on project origination, so we are trying to make the difference. Regulatory framework that can ensure security, predictability, trust from the private sector is really needed in our country if we want to engage on carbon markets. This we have in India, we have in Asia, Latin, but it's lacking in our sub-region. We are working on that. That's why we work on political buy-in, on regulatory framework establishment, and sharing of experience. So far, we have a bit of positive outcome. My colleague from Ghana has listed some example. In Senegal, we have started some, and we'll try to share these experiences in the region. At the end of the day, if we manage to keep this dynamic, we will end up with having a very dynamic carbon market in our sub-region. Thank you. And thank you all for attending, and sorry for the for the
How are you? Nice to see you.